Hey, and welcome. In this video, we're exploring a question that quietly shapes many lives. Why does it matter so much what other people think of us? And more importantly, how can we slowly, realistically loosen the grip of external judgment without becoming cold, detached, or indifferent? This is not a motivational talk, and it's not about just stopping or not caring anymore. Instead, this is a deep psychological exploration of approval, self-worth, social fear, and inner authority, and how our relationship to other people's opinions is formed, maintained, and eventually transformed. Take your time. There is nothing here you need to fix. Chapter 1. Why other people's opinions feel like a matter of survival. To understand why we care so much about what others think, we have to start somewhere uncomfortable. Caring is not the problem. Caring is human. Long before modern society, human beings survived through belonging. To be part of a group meant protection, resources, warmth, and continuity. To be excluded meant exposure, danger, and often death. Your nervous system remembers this. When you sense judgment, real or imagined, your body doesn't react to an opinion. It reacts to a threat to belonging. That's why judgment doesn't just hurt emotionally. It shows up physically. A tightening in the chest, heat in the face, shallow breathing, racing thoughts, an urge to explain, defend, or disappear. These reactions are not irrational, they are ancient. The problem is that modern life produces far more perceived judgment than actual danger, and the nervous system does not easily distinguish between the two. A critical comment, a raised eyebrow, silence where you expected reassurance. Your body responds as if something essential is at risk, and over time, this constant state of social alertness becomes exhausting. Chapter 2. How approval slowly becomes the measure of self-worth. At some point, caring about opinions stops being situational and becomes structural. Instead of reacting occasionally, the mind begins to anticipate judgment. You start to scan ahead. How will this sound? What will they think? Will this be acceptable? This is the moment when external approval quietly replaces internal authority. Psychologically, this shift often begins early in life, not because parents or caregivers were bad, but because love, safety, or attention became linked to behavior. You may have learned to be easy, to be competent, to not cause trouble, to perform well, to stay pleasant. None of these are wrong. But when acceptance depends on them, the nervous system draws a conclusion. I am okay when I'm approved of. From there, self-worth becomes conditional. And once self-worth is conditional, judgment becomes dangerous. Not because opinions are powerful, but because your sense of self is fragile. Chapter 3. Why trying to not care makes everything worse. Many people eventually notice how much energy they lose to other people's opinions. So they try to fix it. They tell themselves, I shouldn't care. This doesn't matter. I'll just stop thinking about it. But this approach almost always backfires. Why? Because you're trying to silence a system designed for protection. Caring about judgment is not a belief you can delete. It's a pattern shaped by emotion, memory, and bodily response. When you try to force indifference, one of two things happens. You fail and feel ashamed for still caring. You succeed superficially and become emotionally numb. Neither leads to freedom. Real change does not come from suppression. It comes from understanding and repositioning. The goal is not to erase concern. The goal is to reduce its authority. Chapter 4. The hidden cost of living for approval. Living for approval doesn't just create anxiety. It quietly reshapes your life. You may notice difficulty making decisions, hesitation before speaking, over-explaining, people-pleasing, avoiding conflict, even when necessary. But the deeper cost is subtler. When your actions are guided by imagined judgment, you slowly lose contact with an essential question. What do I think? Inner clarity fades when it's rarely consulted. And over time, this creates a strange internal emptiness. You're functioning, adapting, coping, but not truly choosing. Approval keeps you safe, but it keeps you small. Chapter 5. The first shift. Understanding that opinions are not truth. The first genuine shift happens when you realize something simple, but difficult to feel. An opinion is not a fact. Every opinion is filtered through someone's experiences, their fears, their values, their unresolved issues. When someone judges you, they are not describing objective reality. They are revealing their perspective. This doesn't mean feedback is meaningless, but it does mean it requires context. A powerful question to ask is, why should this particular person be the authority on my life? Not every voice deserves equal weight. This realization doesn't remove discomfort, but it introduces distance. And distance is where freedom begins. Chapter 6. Learning to tolerate judgment without obeying it. One of the most important and most misunderstood steps in caring less about what others think is this: you don't need judgment to disappear in order to be free. Freedom comes when judgment no longer controls your behavior. This is a subtle but essential distinction. Most people wait for confidence to act. They wait until they feel calm, certain, or unaffected. But that moment rarely comes. Instead, real change happens when you learn to tolerate discomfort without organizing your life around it. Judgment may still show up as tension in the body, a sudden rush of thoughts, self-doubt, the urge to explain or retreat. The difference is that you no longer treat these sensations as commands. You begin to relate to them as signals, not instructions. Psychologically speaking, this is the shift from emotional fusion to emotional regulation. You feel the emotion, but you don't become it. This is not suppression. It's presence without obedience. And like any skill, it develops gradually. Each time you speak honestly despite discomfort, allow silence instead of explaining, choose alignment over approval, you teach your nervous system something new. I can survive this feeling. That lesson is transformative. Chapter 7. Why being misunderstood is not a failure. One of the deepest sources of anxiety around other people's opinions is the fear of being misunderstood. We want to be seen accurately. We want our intentions to be clear. We want fairness. And yet, misunderstanding is not an exception. It is the rule. No one sees you directly. They see you through their experiences, their expectations, their emotional state, their personal history. Even people who care about you misunderstand you sometimes. Trying to control this is exhausting. And worse, it's impossible. The moment you accept that misunderstanding is inevitable, something loosens. You stop performing for clarity. You stop refining yourself endlessly. You stop trying to manage every impression. You realize, I don't need to be fully understood to be valid. This doesn't mean communication doesn't matter. It means you release the fantasy of total control. And in that release, authenticity grows. Chapter 8. Rebuilding inner authority. One decision at a time. Inner authority doesn't arrive suddenly. It's built through repetition. Each time you ask yourself, what feels true to me? What aligns with my values? What would I choose if approval weren't guaranteed? You strengthen your internal compass. At first, this may feel unfamiliar, even frightening. If you've lived externally oriented for a long time, inner authority can feel like standing on uncertain ground. But here's the paradox. The more you trust yourself, the less power other people's opinions hold. Why? Because judgment loses its leverage when it no longer threatens your identity. You stop asking, am I okay? And start asking, am I aligned? This is not arrogance. It's responsibility. You become the primary witness of your own life. Chapter 9. The quiet confidence that replaces approval seeking. Something subtle begins to happen as approval loses its central role. You speak more slowly. You pause before responding. You don't rush to justify yourself. You still care, but selectively. You care about honesty, integrity, meaningful relationships, trusted feedback, and less about imagined judgments, fleeting impressions, people who don't truly know you. This creates a different kind of confidence. Not loud, not performative, but steady. It's the confidence of someone who knows, I can tolerate discomfort. I can stand by my values. I don't need to be liked by everyone. Ironically, this often leads to more respect. not because you seek it, but because you're no longer shaped by it. Chapter 10: Choosing the cost you're willing to pay. There is no life without cost. If you live for approval, the cost is self-betrayal, exhaustion, anxiety, disconnection. If you live from inner authority, the cost is occasional misunderstanding, disappointment, judgment, discomfort. The question is not whether there will be a cost. The question is, which cost are you willing to live with? Most people eventually choose integrity. Not because it's easier, but because it's more sustainable. Caring about what others think is not a weakness. It's a learned response rooted in belonging and protection. But when approval becomes the measure of self-worth, it quietly limits your freedom. Change doesn't come from forcing indifference. It comes from rebuilding inner authority, tolerating discomfort, and choosing alignment over approval. Thank you for taking the time to reflect. Take care. Are there specific topics you're interested in or a particular question you'd like answered in your life? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe now and join me on your journey toward more clarity and inner strength.